Welcome everyone to Jews in Sports with your host, I'm Michael Neuman. Going right into an amazing, very exciting interview with the famous Dani Waldman. As I always like to do, we go with the hardest question for the shortest amount of time, first, right into it. And the question is, what divides us as human beings? And then furthermore, what unifies us? And we'll explain because you have a story with division and acceptance and wonderful like that. So go for it.
Of course, hardest question. I think what divides us is sort of this play on individualism versus sort of nationalism, and each person can be an individual, each culture can be an individual, and a lot of that sort of brings us together. But I think there can also be a turning point where people start to cast stones on individuals. You know, if you express yourself so much, then people say, you know what, I'm afraid. There's a division of sort of saying, you know what, I'm afraid of you, I'm afraid of that, that's different than me. And then it sort of tears people apart. But you know, there is sort of this thing to remember that there's like broad wants and needs with humans, and people forget that we have some like basic things that bring us together. We all need food, we all want community, we all want family, we all want health, you know, and there's so much fear over individualism and being different that people forget about those things that actually bring us together. And, you know, I think that that's a little bit sort of an answer to what divides us is fear of individualism, and what brings us back together is that we're all human, and we have to remember that we can be individuals, but you know, we are all part of one community.
It's a beautiful way, right? I mean, there's a lot of psychology here as a psychologist, right? But it's a beautiful way of, you know, we have basic things, right, as humans that we need, and then but wherever this fear comes from, and there's a lot of explanation, but there's a fear of ourselves, and so then we kind of jump into whatever the community, the nationalism is a community affect or concept, and then we lose ourselves, and
Yeah,
because of that fear.
yeah, amazing example. Like as an individual, you know, I'm got feathers and I'm sort of a bolder personality within my sport, but then, and that separated me and sort of distanced me from a lot of people. But then I actually found that now I have little girls in China, in Canada, in California, in Colorado, all putting feathers in their hair. And it actually brought me together with all of these people across continents. So what made me sort of unique and separate from everyone is actually what's bringing me together.
That is a brilliant point, because it's it's, you know, everyone rejects new things, right?
Yeah.
Because and then we succumb to it because we're so fearful of not being a part of that. But in actuality, and we always see this with change, if you just stay true to who you are, whether they see it or someone else sees it, it doesn't really, by the way, it doesn't end up mattering at that point because you don't care. And then people see you and go, oh, wait a second, there's a different form of thinking that I, you know, and you don't succumb to it. And it's such a beautiful thing to hear girls taking, you know, because it's when you challenge the status quo, you hit a point, it becomes very fearful. It's not like, oh, you're different, so you stay over there. When you challenge the status quo of a community, they freak out and then attack you.
Yeah, totally. Their reaction is aggressive.
Right.
Or never to come away and say, okay, I give them a chance to be themselves. The reaction is always, no, I have to squash this because this is not me. This is different than me. Uh-oh, what can it do to me?
So what should, in your mind, be the response of a community or nationality that says you're different than me? Now what? And you want to be a part of that.
Yeah, I think there has to be a moment of acceptance. You know, maybe radical acceptance where you have to accept that it's 100% not who you are, but you respect that that's who they are. And like, I always find that, you know, I'm not immune to people being mean to me for my individuality. I'm not immune to, you know, it doesn't make me feel good when people are not nice. But on the other hand, I also have to recognize that like what they say doesn't really matter if I feel good about it. You know, so I think my reaction to that is you got to give people a chance to sort of evolve and see if maybe your initial reaction isn't great, but maybe your friend's reaction isn't as harsh, and you need to give it a little bit of time to sort of change has to happen a little bit slowly in that sense.
I love it. So, intro time. Welcome to Jews in Sports. I'm your host, Michael Neuman. Yes, that's me. I competed on LeBron James' show $1 Million Mile on CBS, where I go on to win $25,000 while wearing my yarmulke, inspiring people around the country and creating moments like this. And so I created my foundation, where we take kids with physical challenges through an actual live Spartan race, not only changing their lives, but the lives of the volunteers. I am an elite pro Spartan racer, appearing on many podiums, and am currently training for Season 4 of Israel Ninja Warrior. This is my podcast, delving into life's biggest questions from the perspective of our Jewish athlete heroes. Created to inspire and empower, please enjoy our program. Coming back with Dani Waldman, your story is so awesome because there's so much uniqueness into, a uniqueness. Like most of us, so you are an equestrian rider, you're a horse jumper, and such. We're gonna go through, right? You, an American Israeli, I guess the word would be show jumper.
Yeah.
You've been doing this since you were 8 years old. You win a tournament, the Longens FEI rankings. No, you actually became 43rd ranked. You win a tournament, the first woman to do so in Shanghai. You do all these, really brown. I'm blanking on the word, but you know what I meant. Doing all these amazing things, and then the craziest, most exciting in my head looking in is qualifying for the Olympics for the Israeli four-person team, and then obviously as we see your unique taking the equestrian world by storm and your unique expression with 1,000 different color and usually a lot they change and colorful and different things in the equestrian world, and so creating this uniqueness. And then let's just start with basically explaining equestrian riding, going into it in a sense of what drew you to it at 8 years old. What do you love about it? What skill do you need in it? What's for someone who's never really seen equestrian riding, because it's a huge sport, mind you, by the way. Give someone like myself who doesn't know the ins and outs of it.
Okay, so cool. Yeah. All right. So the basic rundown of equestrian sports there's I think 8 actual disciplines, but there's 3 Olympic disciplines: dressage, 3-day eventing, and show jumping. And I am a show jumper, which means that we ride horses over like a course of obstacles in an arena. The obstacles are about 1.6 meters in height, which is about 5'3". And yeah, it's a competition of sort of speed and agility, and there's penalties if we knock the poles down. And so that's sort of basic rundown of the sport. What drew me to it? Good question. My father was a professional squash player. He was #1 in the world. My mom played professional squash and tennis. I played tennis when I was a kid. How the hell I got into sports, into show jumping, I have no idea. So I should have been a racket player of some sort, but I'm not. I don't know. I think I was always a country mouse living in the city kind of thing. I loved the barn. I loved the smell of the horses. I always loved animals. Now I have like 5 dogs and 600 horses and a whole bunch of cats. And so, I was just an animal lover. And I loved that like connection of the partnership between the horse and the rider. With tennis, you don't have a partnership with your racket. Sure, it needs to be technical and the strings need to be tight enough and it needs to be, functional. But with the horse, you're dealing with 2 personalities. And I loved that sort of connection that I didn't find in other sports. I did gymnastics, I did ice skating, I did so many other things as a kid. And the horses just like sucked me in, and that smell, I just still to this day, I love the smell of the barn, and I could like bury my head in their neck and just smell them. They smell so good. So that's, I think, what drew me to the equestrian sport in the end. And then I guess maybe I had some talent for it. So that always helped when you do well, and then it helps to want to keep doing it.
I always say that, right? When you you know, you always quit when you're bad at something. You never quit when you're good at something.
Right, exactly.
But it's very interesting with the relationship with the horse, because I was going to ask you about that, because I know there's like a really wonderful bond with the
Yeah.
riders and their horses.
Well, hopefully there is.
Hopefully, right. Well, usually the performance, well, also because the horses can sense, right? If you're nervous before, I know this, right? If you're nervous before one of these equestrian races things, right? The horse feels it, and then the horse reacts, even though it's been reacting fine, it reacts a certain way. And that's what's really cool about this relationship, is in that it's not just the horse goes and does what it needs to do. It's like really like a partnership with someone who doesn't talk back.
It's really a team between you and the horse. You know, you have both, to have success, you both have to peak on the same day. You can't have the horse, you know, be amazing and the rider screw up and it go well. Like, you both have to be amazing on the day. So it's really a partnership and a team.
And just to drive into what we were talking about before about unity, because it's an interesting concept, right? It's though you're not communicating, right, verbally with the horse. You know, we have to put this stuff.
It would be amazing if we could. But we can't.
Although I feel like you don't wish, you know, when you wish for something and then you realize it's not as amazing. See, like the horse.
We don't want to know what they're saying.
The horse giving giving you sass back. You know, I don't want to go to that.
Go back to not hearing, to not understanding us. That would be better.
But it's a beautiful concept of acceptance, right? The horse accepts who you are, you accept who the horse is. There's no, you know, squashing the other person, and you guys just create kind of this art in the sense of from emotions. The horse is emotional, you're emotional, and you guys create this, you know, you have to jump, and it's so technical in such an emotional thing, which is so cool because it's so technical.
Yeah, totally.
If you're off, so when you do it, these jumps and things, how precise do you need to be? And does it matter if you like miss, like if you knock a pole down, is it a huge thing in your mind, and how do you recover fast enough, because the horse can feel that as well?
Good question. Okay, I mean, it's not something, if you knock a pole down, you can't ever regain those points. So if you knock one down, it's one, extremely distracting. Two, it's going to permanently be on your score. We can't do anything about it. It's not like if you fall down, you know, ice skating, that you say, you know what, I'm changing my program and I do another one and you can make it back up. We can't make it back up. So we go in there with the intention of trying not to knock anything down. And if we do make a mistake, it's extremely distracting. Sometimes the horses get crazy distracted and then they knock multiple jumps down because they're thinking about that. Sometimes the rider, you know, it's sort of our job as the pilot to not think about the mistakes. The idea is that we have to say, okay, put that behind us and look at the next jump. So, and to make sure we don't knock anything else down. But it's certainly a distracting thing when a mistake is made.
And again, I think it's a lesson for most people, right? We're human beings, but you have to not, in all sports, right? When I compete and stuff like that, you think about the last thing, you're done. Like, you have to continue moving forward with a positive mindset. And it's so interesting to hear that you have to have that, or else the horse is going to go nuts.
Yeah, you're totally screwed if you keep thinking about the past. You know, there's always a good saying, look where you want to go, not where you don't want to go. And it's so simple, of that concept of like, we have to keep looking forward to the next jump. You can't ever look towards, you know, what happened or what you think is going to happen. It has to be, this is the track I want to take, and you keep going forward. With the horses, it has to always be like that.
So you become, so that was such a beautiful, in a sense, from the horse and that, but then you have this career in 2012, you turned pro, you have this wonderful career of expressing and you know, and just, you know, just meeting you now, it's just like, I'm sure everyone who meets you is just like, right. And you gotta be better and happier. And it's amazing. And you take it by storm, you become 43rd, you know, ranked, and, you know, amazing things. And then, you know, now a huge ultimate dream and goal of going to the Olympics for Israel. However, when you get Israeli citizenship and start competing for Israel, the community, at least the equestrian or maybe more on, kind of rejects you, which is if you can walk us through that story, and because it's funny because now you're representing Israel in the Olympics. So, they say, no, get out of here. And then they're like, oh, wait a second, you're representing us. So it's cool.
Yeah, it was a strange beginning, I think. I grew up in a really Zionistic family in New York. I always, since I was a little kid in my family, said, I'm always going to ride for Israel. Like, it wasn't even a question. It was always like, this is what you should do. And if you have a choice between the US and Israel, why not choose Israel? It's a small country. It needs more representation. There's a million riders in America. Anyone can do that. But, not everyone could be a representative for Israel. So for me, it was a really easy decision. And I graduated college and I got Israeli citizenship. And then I said, okay, I'm going to ride for Israel. And initially I was thinking like, this was great. I'm going to try and help and it's going to be amazing. And their reaction was like, get out of here. Like, who are you? You're not one of us. You haven't had any shared experiences of growing up in Israel. I wasn't in the army. I'm an outsider, and not only just an outsider, but I'm using this sort of change of nationality for personal gain. They said you're doing this as a career move. Get out of here. We don't want that. We want a representative that represents us. And they didn't feel like I was part of them. And it was a really difficult transition because in my mind, I was like, oh, this is going to be great. And, everyone should be so happy. And the reaction was like, no, this is not happy. You're going to have to prove yourself and maybe you're never going to be able to do it. So it was a process of like 8 to 10 years of me basically representing Israel, succeeding, and getting to know everybody in the equestrian community in Israel and spending time there and speaking with people and understanding their perspective. I started as an outsider, and I think had I come in and it was like really easy, I wouldn't have really understood the real Israeli perspective. And because they gave me so much pushback, it actually makes me now feel like I am somewhat part of that community, because now I spent time, I talked to these people and I understood the community. And now I can say I feel like I'm one of them, even though I am not in Israel full time and I wasn't born there. At least now I have some understanding of where they were coming from. And I recognize that you're right. I came in this very uneducated idea of what representing Israel meant. And now I think it's so much better. And now I have a relationship with people in the horse community. I have like friends that I consider family over there. I know people in the governing bodies. So now my sort of reach in the community there is much, much broader. And I can actually say, I feel like Israeli finally. I'm never going to be somebody from Israel, but at least I feel like I represent the country well, or I try to.
It's so funny that is such a beautiful story, because it resonates with a lot of people in a way that we go through that all the time in life, right? We think it's going to be easy. I always wanted to be a basketball player and and shooting the last shots and stuff like that, and then no, it's hard work, and you have to prove yourself in a way. And the question that I would have to you is, I think a lot of people and myself I'm curious to know, when you have to prove yourself, right? It never seems like it's enough ever, right?
Yeah, totally.
In any community. And then also the way of being yourself, because you don't want to just change over into whatever no, that you're not Israeli and whatnot. And so then someone would say, okay, so tell me how to be Israeli. But then you're losing yourself, and that's not the way to do that. So how do you balance, wearing your feathers and Israelis going, what the heck is this?
Not only Israelis, everyone says that. So, how do I balance that? I think I balance it by, I don't know. You know what? I always was an individual. Like, even in America as a kid, it wouldn't matter what anyone said to me. I was going to wear a tutu for 2 weeks straight. I didn't care what my parents thought or anyone thought. So for me to stay true to myself was a bit maybe naturally more easy, because it's just a bit my personality and who I am. But there were definitely times where I was like, you know what, maybe I need to change how I talk about this or change how I behave, because I didn't want to offend people, because I got the feeling that I was offending people. So it's a fine line between sort of staying true to yourself, but also being sensitive and delicate to other people's opinions and feelings. So, you need to stick to who you are. And for me, that was maybe a bit easier because screw it, I can do what I'm going to do anyway. But with Israel, it took a sensitivity that, I developed over time.
And again, it's an important message because I mean you see it in all facets of the Jewish community, right? We have it. You have a Sephardic versus Ashkenaz. You have a Reform versus Orthodox. It's there's so much, and to your point, and I don't think we're trying to say lose that, and I think that's why the your story with Israel is such a beautiful thing, because we're not saying lose the say no, just be yourself, or just whatever. There's a balance as far as being who you are and having an identity, and then losing yourself. Like, you don't want to just be an Israeli now and just have that personality. You want to be yourself and have that balance.
No, especially I'm an American Israeli. I grew up in America. I'm never going to lose that identity. Especially, I grew up as a Jew in America, so I'm never going to lose my Jewish identity. And, I also thought coming into Israel, like, all right, I'm a Jew. I'm one of you guys. What are you talking about? And in the end, being Israeli is not about being Jewish at all. So, or at least not a main thing. You know what I mean? There's a lot of other things that make people Israeli. And so it's keeping that identity, as well as sort of, it was more expanding my identity than changing it. Look at it.
Cool. And then what does Jewish identity mean to you? All right. Snap.
Yeah. I mean, again, I am Reformed. I don't actually really practice much at all these days. I had a bat mitzvah in Israel. That was the first time I ever went there. So I certainly had, and I grew up in a Zionistic family, so it was always about Israel. But being Jewish and my Jewish identity is now more a cultural thing. I ended up meeting, I think, one of the only other Jewish Americans in the horse world living in Holland as my husband. And I always say to him, I love that we're both Jewish, not because we practice or anything like that from the religious end, but because we have a shared cultural history that we don't have to talk about, and yet there's an understanding. So I think it's about that sort of sense of community and family about my Jewish identity that I sort of hold on to, not so much from the religious end.
And then it's a beautiful description, because there is a connectiveness. You can't, through all Jews and whatnot. And it's interesting to hear from the Israeli perspective that it's not all about that. I'm sure, there's so many scopes and things, but and then just moving toward you started at 8 years old, right, competing, and it always fascinates me from a kid's standpoint, handling pressure, right? You see these kids go on the TV shows, right? America's Got Talent and stuff. And you're just like, oh my God, the trauma must be ridiculous.
I think that all the time.
So what would you tell yourself from this standpoint, really pressured huge situations to an 8-year-old, to your 8-year-old self on how to handle those pressures? Because I think it's a huge thing from a kid's standpoint, handling that pressure.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've gotten better at handling pressure over time, for sure. I mean, nowadays, actually, I think I excel the more pressure there is. The more pressure I feel like recently, they keep putting me as the anchor on the teams because I seem to handle pressure when it's really important. I seem to do better. So, but I don't think I was necessarily always like that, for sure, especially as an 8-year-old kid. You have many doubts. But in some ways, maybe it's easier being an 8-year-old kid. Maybe it's back when I was 8, I didn't think about the pressure. You're like, no, I'm just going to go ride my horse and it's easy. So maybe then I didn't feel the pressure. But I think if I had to talk to my 8-year-old self now, I would say it's not so much about the pressure. It's about worrying about the task at hand. And that's a little bit how I approach it now when I go in the ring. There can be 40,000 people in the stands and it can be the Olympic ticket on the line, but you can't think about those things. You have to sort of put your head down, tunnel vision, and say, just, look where I'm going, not where I don't want to go. Just keep your task and your job at hand the most important thing. So to my 8-year-old self, I would say, don't worry about any of that stuff. Hopefully you're not thinking about it, but if you are, just think about enjoy riding and go out there and, you know, try and execute your plan and you use the skills that you have to just ride and don't worry about the rest.
So you bring self-doubt, you bring all these interesting words to play, 40,000 people. And, you know, like we're seeing it now with the NBA and the sports teams playing with no fans and stuff like that, and how people are saying, oh, it's a different game, right? It's not, you're not messing yourself up mentally. So like, I'm going to like, come on, like 40,000 people, Olympic ticket on the line. What happens in your brain? You just don't think about it. You're so confident that you're just like, I'm going to like, what's happening?
I don't think it's a matter of being confident. I think it's a matter of realizing that maybe there are 40,000 people in the stands. Maybe it is the Olympic ticket. Maybe, you know, it's just something you want to win for yourself. But those factors, you can't do anything about them. I couldn't do anything about the fact that if I made a mistake, I was letting down my team. I was, you know, there's tons of pressure, but you can't change those things. The only thing that you can actually do is your job. And for me, that's the only thing I can control. The only thing I control was, you know, telling my horse the right things and steering and getting over the jumps and getting through the finish line. I couldn't control the rest of it. So for me, it was almost like there was no pressure. It was like I can't do anything about this stuff. I just have to do this. So I'm just going to do this. I'm going to put my head down. I'm not going to look up. I'm not going to look at the people. And I'm just going to, you know, go over the course in my head multiple times and say, okay, I need to do this at this point. And then I need to do this. And then I need to do this. And you just think about those things. You don't think about the rest of it because the rest of it are unchangeable facts.
So what you're saying is, in order not to succumb to that pressure, whether you can call it fake or real, right? You're simplifying it. You're looking at the little tasks of the things, but how you're not even going to the thoughts is saying, I can't control that. So if I can't control it, why am I thinking about it? And then that forces you to basically just, it becomes natural in a sense that you don't even think about the 40,000 people because you can't control what they think or what happens or whatnot. So it becomes easy to look at, hey, are my feet in position? Is my horse good? And things. And then it's just not hard, basically, because you've created this psychological or cognitive understanding that there's just no reason to think about it. The same way I wouldn't, if someone was chopping a tree, I don't know why this example came up, but if someone was chopping a tree outside and it's freezing cold and I'm not going outside, I'm not going to even really think about that guy chopping the tree, and I'm going to order wood on Amazon.
Yeah.
That was the most ridiculous explanation.
That's a strange example, but yes.
But it worked.
I mean, it's funny. I was talking with my husband yesterday, and he was sort of making, maybe it wasn't the nicest joke, but it was a joke. And he was like, oh, he's like, you're impossible. You can't multitask. He's like, if I'm trying to do something, he's like, you can't think of two things at once. And maybe that's my strength, is that actually, you know, I can't think about all the pressure and the stress because I have to think about my job. So for me, it made it really easy. I'm not multitasking. I'm just doing what I have to do right in front of me.
This is a huge lesson. This is a huge, I don't want to say lesson because we're not teaching anyone. They can take whatever they want. But this is a huge understanding in a sense that scientifically, you can't multitask. It's impossible.
And literally only do one thing at a time.
Right. Your brain only works like that. So in all of our daily lives, you know, we focus on 4 or 5 different things really, you know, because we're trying to control it and really realize, and it's such a beautiful way psychologically, we're happier when we focus on one thing.
Yeah.
To the point, you can function in a pressured situation. I mean, that is huge. 40,000 people in a stand, going to the Olympics. Like I would say, like, I would have to like try to reconstruct my brain and say, you know, I don't know. I feel like I would succumb to it at some point, but you've got it down to a science where you're just like, no, and you want the pressure. You want.
Yeah, I want that. It creates the sharpness. If there's no pressure, I make careless mistakes. With the pressure, I'm way, way sharper.
That's so cool.
Unlike a lot of athletes, like even other members on my team, they want to know the real specifics. They want to know, like, I have to do this and this to be able to qualify or something. You know, I can't have this fault, or I can do this. I can be slower, but I can't have a fault. They want to know this. I don't want to know anything. Don't tell me any of that before going in. Like, Don't tell me I have to jump clear. Don't tell me you can have one down. I don't want to fucking know. I just want to do my plan and my job. So I think that that's also like a difference a bit how my brain works. Like again, it's like I can't multitask. I can't think about those things and do my job. So don't tell them to me. If you want to tell me after, like, oh my God, you couldn't have anything down, you couldn't have a mistake, fine. But when I'm trying to do my job, like just let me do my job.
Right.
You know, and that's a bit how I function.
I love the conversation we just had, because it's very, very applicable to daily living.
Yeah, totally.
You know, it is. I gotta, the meaning behind the feathers, we have to get into it.
Okay.
Because, again, it's self-expression. It's, girls around the world, mimicking you in a sense of, hey, maybe I can express myself this way or whatnot. What's the meaning behind it? Where'd it come from? And because it represents more than it impacts people. It challenges their brain to say, wait, why is that different? Why is that unique? And then they go, oh, because I'm not open-minded or whatever. It's cool.
Basic story is I was always somebody to change my hair. Like I was the kind of person that wanted to look in the mirror, and every so often I'd be like bored and I'd be like, I'm going to change it up, So when I was a kid, I had red hair and I had blonde hair and I had bangs and whatever. And then I said one day I had pink hair, and then I had blue hair. And then I like chopped it all off, dyed it my natural color, cut bangs, and had like a little like sort of short bob. And then I was talking to my husband and I was saying, I want to do something different. What do you think? And I was looking on Pinterest, and I saw a picture of somebody with a hair feather, with like a thin little single hair feather. And I said, oh, I could put a feather in. And he looked at me and he goes, what if you did all feathers? And the best part of it is that he's super allergic to the feathers. Like he hates them and is crazy allergic. So, but it was his own fault. He started it. But in my head at that moment, I had this like sort of creative idea where I was like, oh my God, I could create like this beautiful colored look without actually damaging my hair. And it would be unique. And I've never seen it anywhere else. And for me, the best thing was when I started to look up, pictures with women with feathers in their hair, or anyone with feathers in their hair, I couldn't find them. And for me, that's always a great sign. When I can't find that pictures or examples, then I know it's a unique idea. And it started just because I thought it was cool and it was beautiful. And it started with like 250 individual feathers. And now it's 3,000 individual feathers. And it like morphed into this whole other thing. And I didn't mean for it to be inspiring. I didn't mean for it to be an expression of individualism. It just was me being me. I didn't like think of it in the broader picture. I just thought like, wow, this is fucking cool. Like this looks beautiful, So I just thought it was amazing looking. And then I kept having like new ideas every couple months, like, ooh, I could change the color. And like this time I added tinsel. So now it's like sparkly and like, you know what I mean? I just change it up, and it turned into, and it really like morphed into this whole movement that I didn't even really mean. And then it became a hashtag, own your identity. And it just became a symbol for people especially in our sport, which is, I think a lot of sports are very conservative, but my sport is the most conservative traditional sport you can imagine. And it was a huge thing for somebody to say like, you know what, I don't have to look like everybody else. I don't have to be a little clone, of my little blazer and white pants and looking like everybody else and no one can tell me apart. It was like, I love fashion. I love changing my hair up and feeling different and like an individual. And now I can actually bring it into the sport. And then somehow in my own psyche, it became this like amazing sense of confidence. Like I did it, and then I would walk out into the world in the morning and I would get comments about how beautiful it was. And then I would think like, oh my God, this looks awesome. This is amazing. Or I can match my outfit. And then I started to feel better about myself. And then that sort of attitude reflected eventually in my riding. And then I felt better about my riding. And then I was riding better. And then the results were better. And then I started winning more. And it like was this snowball effect of what started as sort of this fashion personal choice into, you know what, I actually am going to take this and use it, because it express to people who I was and who I am as a person, and then also in my riding.
It's a very interesting point at the end. It wasn't, because it was so beautiful in the concept that you usually start doing better when you in anything, whatever the life is, when you start asking yourself who you are. And I've gone to talks and I've said to people, who are you? And I'll Goodwill Hunt it, right? Who are you? Who are you? Who are you? And they will say they have a little panic attack. They get very, very nervous and a little anxiety feel, because whatever the case is, a lot of people don't know who they are. And once you start expressing who you are, wherever that comes from, we're not saying that, again, we said there is a balance, right? There is, you can't say, I don't know, whatever, this is who I am. And so, something, whatever it is, whatever that thing, so extreme, but this is who you are. And it came naturally. And then there's obviously with other people, and there's a balance to those things, but you end up performing and just living happier and doing better. And like I had it with Spartan racing and my show, like once I started this, spiritual and meditation and combining all these different things, all of a sudden I started performing better. And it's so funny because we just stay in a rhythm of robot, I say this about Judaism for everyone. Judaism is not a religion or concept of creating robots. We want identity. We want, totally. to expression. And I just love the fact that it came from the fact that I'm just going to be who I am. Let's see what happens. Whatever, you accept me, you don't, I don't care at the end of the day, And then it turned into this movement of be yourself, because I was being myself,
No, it's amazing. It really was amazing, especially because like I was always sort of a free-spirited kind of, I would try out different, one day I'd wear goth clothing in high school. And then one day I'd wear like a floral dress or tutu or, so I was always like playing with my identity, trying to figure, I think, which is why I was always changing my hair and getting bored with things. Cause I was always trying to find myself. And I always used to hear like, oh, college is the time to find yourself and blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't until the last like 4 or 5 years that I really found myself. And now I'm 35 and I actually finally feel really comfortable in my identity. And then of course, I think that's why my career took off so much in the last couple of years, because it all coincided.
The equestrian world, you hit it, and we'll end with here, because it is a beautiful way to end with the self-expression and concept. But the equestrian world, and this is, I think, a lesson that maybe you can give us. Very proper, right? Very, probably down to language you use on the grounds, right? Yeah. It's not proper, obviously there was pushback, but how did you handle it? Because I mean, the Jews with the shidduch system, I'm not very, anyway, I'm unique and it doesn't fit, with a lot of people's ideologies, and they say, don't do this and don't do that and don't do this. And then what's the response? How do you, because you have to respond because you're in the equestrian world, and they say, a big critic in the equestrian world probably said, you're damaging our sport. And how could you be doing this? And I didn't even research that. I'm just guessing.
No, someone went further as to what, like a very famous professional who is a bit older now and doesn't ride himself, but was super famous in his day. I mean, he wrote on Facebook publicly that I'm ruining the sport of show jumping. And that I'm a disgrace. I mean, someone said I was offending my horse, which is a ridiculous comment. But I mean, there was plenty of things that went around, especially at one point I had feathers that looked like flames and they were really visible, which of course were my favorite, and they were so awesome. And I want to like do them again because they were so cool. But they were very visible, so everyone could really see them when I rode. And I had so many negative comments of like, you can't wear this and the feathers and you're ruining things, and you're so not elegant, you're ruining the elegance of the sport. And I kept saying, like, I'm not asking anyone else to do this. Like, I'm not saying that anyone else has to do this or has to look like me. I was just saying I'm doing this and I'm within the rules. Like, I was made sure that I was within the rules. They're in my hair when I sleep, when I'm naked, they're still attached to me. This isn't something that I was putting on my clothing or as an additive. You know, I wash my hair with the feathers. I sleep with the feathers. They're part of me. The same as a tattoo might be. You know, I mean, these are things that within the rules they couldn't say you can't do it. So I didn't feel like I was breaking any rules, but I felt like I was just expressing myself, and I wasn't saying everyone should do this. I was just being me. And you know, the pushback was not nice. I got calls from the head of our like international governing body being like, hey, any chance you'll take them out? And I was like, are you telling me I have to, or are you just giving me a courtesy call saying you don't like them? And it was sort of like, I can't tell you not to take them out or to take them out, but you know, people are complaining. And I was like, you know what, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's good that it starts a discussion, that we bring more exposure to our sport. We have a small, very like insulated sport. How about we make it more accessible to other people? How about we give some kids idols to look up to in our sport? You know, how about we actually do something positive that can bring notoriety and awareness to our small little sport that I love so much? And in the end, they sort of backed off and said, you know what, you're right. We're not asking you to do anything. Keep being you. And in the end, that was like, you know, confirmation that this was a good thing. And now I get very few negative comments. You know, an occasional I don't like it, but nobody's really dicky anymore.
Well, because you did well. No, I'm joking. But the balance, you hit on some, by the way, all of that can be applied to life, and I hope people do. But the balance, and this is something that just hit and resonated really, really hard. We were talking about the balance, you know, being in a community and being yourself. And I think you nailed it. And I think this is a cool thing for people to understand. Like, you're not telling you didn't come into the sport and say everyone should be wearing pink vests. You know, we should change the structure of it and stuff. Obviously, why people push back is because it could end up. So if the masses,
they're afraid that that will happen eventually.
Right, the masses will rally, or it'll take away the manipulation. That's what I believe a lot of the stuff is, and then they'll say, "Oh no, we should change the rules," and those people don't want the rules changed or whatever the system is because it's whatever the reasoning. And so you nailed it on the head in the sense of how you combat that, in a sense of, I'm not telling you to do this. You know, I think that's the message in a sense of, you know, you don't have to wear feathers. You don't have to, you know, when I go around and speak to yeshiva kids and be soccer girls or whoever, I don't say, be an athlete. I don't say that. I said the message is, be yourself and go ahead and do whatever you want. You know, and then people go, oh, that's it.
Not what I want you to do.
What? Yeah.
Do what you want to do, not what I want you to do.
Right. I say my message is take the relationship with God and the spirituality first, then go impact whatever you want to do in life. So it's a beautiful message of, you know, making clear to people, you can do whatever you want. Go. You know, I'm not telling you to do this and that. And I thought that's a well balance in the sense of how you can thrive in a community and have your individual self. You know, you have like with the yeshiva kids that wear, you know, very exuberant clothes, right? Yeah. If they came in and said, yeah, you should wear, you know, pink shirt, you know, this whole system is ridiculous. No, that's not the right message. That's, you know, that's not it. But if he says, listen,
that's going to make people do zero of that.
Right. Exactly. Ending off with a last very important question that I think is going to get a good laugh. I'm curious. Are we changing the feathers to Israeli colors for the Olympics?
You'll have to wait and see. Surprise! I do know what I'm going to do, but it's a surprise.
Okay. Thank you so much for your wisdom, your energy, the information that we learned today. Again, it is a wonderful story from, you know, individual perspective in a community and structure that projects, and the success story of we can all, you know, we don't have to be fighting each other. You know, let me wear my feathers, let me be who I am, and let's represent Israel in the Olympics. You know, that's what's cool about it, you know.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
So nice. Yeah, it was so nice being here. Thank you.
Take care, everyone. And as I like to say, Smile and impact people, inspire, and have an amazing day.
Good words. I like it. Bye, everyone.